ruling political parties across Europe. Now, once this has been going on, it's also been going on elsewhere in the world. Because we have the League of African Nations, we have the League of Arab Nations, we have the Asia-Pacific Economic Community, the Southeast Asia Economic Community, and most significantly, legislation which has been in place since October 2005 in Canada, the US, and Mexico to establish the North American Union. Now, the next stage of this, and I mean, this is already well underway, the same strategy as within Europe, start off with an economic community. What we had in the US started off with GATT, and now NAFTA, and now the next step is to crash the dollar and introduce a common currency across Canada, the US, and Mexico, the AMERO. And this is why we see gold ramping at a phenomenal rate of knots. Price of gold today is around about $1,160. It actually went up on Thursday to $1,195 an ounce. In 2001, it was $250 an ounce. You know, everybody, most people, are under the impression that the years 2003 to 2007 was a fantastic bull market for the stock market and for the property market. Yet when you compare it to the price of gold, both stocks and property were devaluing. They were going down. It's smoke and mirrors. Now, the real wet dream of the guys putting this agenda together is the next stage of the game, which is to merge the North American Union with the European Union, forming the North Atlantic Union. Their most aggressive goal for this is 2014. Now, some believe that what is being planned is a massive false flag event for the London Olympics in 2012, which will actually be used to accelerate this agenda and establish global governance. But failing that, the aggressive agenda is 2014, the conservative agenda is 2022. And this combination of the North American Union and the European Union forming the North Atlantic Union will create an economic bloc of in excess of 1 billion people, effectively becoming a counter to the Chinese, to India. You don't really want to know their objective beyond that. This is the World Bank. The World Bank is the primary henchman of the UN, of course working very much in parallel with the World Trade Organization, which certainly has nothing to do with trade, and the World Health Organization, which absolutely has nothing to do with health. Now, in the EU, of course, which is about as undemocratic as you can possibly get, I mean, electing MEPs is just a complete joke. Your MEP actually has less influence on the running of the EU than a trade union representative does on the running of the company in which they are employed. It is nothing more than a consultative committee, and there is no requirement on commissioners or the Council of Ministers to consult with the MEPs. What it is effectively, it's a safety valve. It's to give the people the impression that they can come along and talk to their MEP about various issues, and that the MEPs actually might do something about it. Well, regardless of whether they have any intent or desire to do anything about it, the reality is they can't. They have absolutely no influence whatsoever. It's the Council of Ministers and the Trade Commission that have held the power, but of course now we have a president. This guy was the Trade Commissioner, and actually, I have no time for this guy. He's not called the Prince of Darkness in the UK for nothing, let me tell you. But he did have his finger on the pulse, and it is this guy that has kept growth hormone contaminated beef out of Europe. Now, not because of any desire on his part prevent it, but he knows that the public in Europe are not ready to accept the growth hormone contaminated beef. This is a drug marketed by Monsanto that on the female cow increases the production of milk, increases the lactation, causes terrible deformity. Unfortunately, many of the dairy farmers are realizing actually that it has a seriously negative impact on the quality of the milk and on the life expectancy of the cow. On the beef cattle, then it sort of like beefs them up and allegedly grow quicker and they can get a quicker return on it. But of course, it should be no surprise that beef being a key part of the diet in Texas, where I lived for 3 years, and it made me look like a dwarf. This stuff doesn't just stop at the beef. Now, he knows that if you try to permit Europe or agree to Europe importing the beef, there would be, people hit the streets. But what you probably don't know is that Europe pays 140 million euros a year as a fine to the World Trade Organization because Europe refuses to import growth hormone contaminated beef. It's a taxation. It's a form of taxation. What you do, they tried to do this with South Korea. They tried to get South Korea to import growth hormone contaminated beef. 40,000 people hit the streets. Now, this wasn't a European type protest where people hit the streets, have a nice day out and then go home. 40,000 people hit the streets and stayed there. And by the end of a week, it was like 100,000. By the end of 10 days, it was 200,000. And the South Korean government went back to the World Trade Organization and said, look, there's no way we can do it. The country's basically shut down. So the World Trade Organization said, well, okay, 40 million a year? It's just outrageous. But this is the kind of crap that doesn't get reported, of course. Now, Mandelson was pulled back into the UK because this guy is Machiavellian to the absolute eye teeth. And so he was pulled back to the UK to bolster up Gordon Brown. And he was replaced by Baroness Ashton, of course, who was extremely well qualified to be the EU Trade Commissioner because she knows nothing about trade. And now she's appointed EU Foreign Minister, and you look at her resume, she knows nothing. Nothing at all about international relations. I mean, she was the treasurer of Greenpeace. I mean, she's never been elected to anything. She is appointed, like most of these functionaries, because they are a safe pair of hands. In other words, they'll do exactly what they're told. Now, this guy was, of course, promised the EU presidency. And I've got to tell you, I never thought that I would celebrate anything about the EU at all. Because this is where the guy needs to be. And I hope at some point in my lifetime I may actually get to see that. I mean, there is an inquiry now going on in the UK, and there's a desperate attempt to, make the inquiry a complete non-event. But fortunately, the media are latching onto it. Of course, it would be a whitewash. But I knew this guy had been promised the EU the moment that Tony Blair announced that he was going to convert to the Catholic faith. The EU is a Catholic entity. And there will never be a Protestant president of the EU entity. So just like in the UK, we will never have a Catholic Prime Minister. Not in it matters anyway now, but there won't be a Catholic Prime Minister. We can have a Jewish Prime Minister, we can have a humanist Prime Minister. Most of the time they declare themselves to be Protestant, but never a Catholic. The EU is the opposite. It will never have a Protestant Prime Minister, President. So this was part of his deal. He had to convert to Catholicism to become a candidate. But then of course he was ruled out because he was seen as too high risk. And I've got to say that I never thought I'd do it, but I went, yes! Because the look on his face showed that he was totally shocked. He had been promised this, he'd done everything that he had been asked to do in the UK except take the UK into the Euro. But in terms of totally demolishing 800 years of common law rule in the UK, The UK no longer has civil law. The UK is now effectively subject to civil law, Napoleonic law, just as the rest of Europe. Tony was obviously he's not a major player. He's what I call the Sonderkommando. An unfortunate term, but it describes perfectly what these guys are. You know, in the Jewish ghettos in the Second World War, the Nazis appointed members of the Jewish community to manage the Jewish community. And they gave the Sonderkommando better housing, better food, you know, and gave them the impression that they were actually valued. Well, it's the same deal here. You know, these guys, the guys like Blair, Cheney, Bush, they're the Sonderkommando. They're not the real scriptwriters. But they are carrying out the instructions of those who want to establish a new world order. And now in British politics, this phrase was hardly ever mentioned until a little over 2.5 years ago. Now, new world order, new financial order, new global order just rolls off the tongue. And it's part of the programming of the people to get the people prepared for global governance. You know, let's understand, because the objectives of the new world order are very clear. One world government, one world economy, one world religion, theirs, and most significantly, a population of less than 1 billion people. So you say, oh my God, that's outrageous. That's just a ludicrous, speculative, conspiracy theory. Give me the proof. Well, want to see it in tablets of stone? The Georgia Guidestones. The Georgia Guidestones, which mysteriously appeared in Elbert County, Georgia, in 1982. They are attributed to a mysterious R.C. Christian. There's been a lot of speculation as to who R.C. Christian might or might not be. Some people have speculated that the R.C. stands for Rosicrucian, but it's pure speculation. There is some admittedly tenuous evidence to link a guy called Erwin Laszlo to this monument. Erwin Laszlo is the founder of the Club of Budapest, which is an offshoot of the Club of Rome. The Club of Rome is one of the primary think tanks driving the strategy to establish the New World Order. Now, check these out for yourselves. If you haven't seen the Georgia Guidestones before, go Google them. Because on these Guidestones, and as you can see, they're not small. I think they're about 20 odd feet high. And it's granite. So, you know, costs more than a few bucks. But on these Guidestones, in 12 modern languages and 12 ancient languages, are the 10 primary goals and objectives of the New World Order. Now, I'm not going to go through all 10, but let me just introduce you to 3. Number 1, maintain humanity under 500 million. Now, at least the New World Order have said elsewhere that they think billions, okay? But here, it's stating 500 million. In perpetual balance with nature. Guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. And the last one was, be not a cancer on the earth, leave room for nature, leave room for nature. Now, these stones have actually attracted the attention of a lot of environmentalist groups, a lot of New Age groups, latching on to this, saying, yeah. You notice that anybody who talks about population reduction, though, never volunteers themselves or their family to be first in line. Oh yeah, world's overpopulated. We'll go. And you're not going to see it. It's always somebody else. And particularly this group, that, like I said, don't share the basics of what we consider to be humanity. So they actually consider the other 6.5 billion people to be no more than cattle. It's like, you know, when they commit atrocities, whether it be on the battlefield or whatever, it's just collateral damage. But not everybody agrees. This is some of the more articulate graffiti.